Good day, everyone, and welcome to lecture number 2 of Cricket South Africa's Level 1 umpiring course, brought to you by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Tom Mokorosi, and as usual this evening, I will be joined by my colleague Abdullah Steenkamp to present to you today's lecture, which will include laws 6 through to 11. I will start with laws 6, 7, and 8, and Abdullah will take us through laws 9, 10, and 11. A reminder of the meeting protocols, which are up on your screen. Your microphones and cameras are currently inactive, but when we've finished presenting today's content, we will start our question and answer session, at which stage I will enable your microphones and cameras. While we present, you are free to post your questions in the chat box. Please keep the questions related to the content that we're presenting in today's lecture. And if come the end of the course, you still haven't got a chance to ask your question, on the 14th of October, which is our last lecture, you will be able to ask absolutely any question related to cricket umpiring. When the Q&A session starts, we will read through the questions in the chat box. Once we are done with that, then we will take any virtual hands which are up in the meeting room. When we prompt you, you can turn on your microphone and your camera if you so wish, and then ask your question. We might go over time during our question and answer session. That's perfectly okay. We enjoy the interaction. You're welcome to leave at any time because, of course, all our lectures are recorded and recordings are posted on our YouTube page. For those of you who missed out on yesterday's lecture, Abdullah is going to post the YouTube link for the recording of lecture number 1 so that you can catch up on that later in your own time. So let's move into this evening's content. Law 6 is the pitch. I'm sure we all know that the pitch is the rectangular piece of ground that the game of cricket is played on. It is often referred to as being 22 yards long. Here in South Africa, we have the metric measurement system, I think, and we measure in meters and centimeters. 22 yards is equal to 20 meters, 0.12 centimeters in length, from bowling crease to bowling crease, from middle stump to middle stump. And the pitch width is 3.05 meters or 10 feet wide. Very important that you know these measurements for the exam, and this graphic illustration is very useful to be able to picture what the width and the length of a cricket pitch looks like. People often ask me, what happens if you get to a ground and the pitch length is out, either too long or too short? So here at Western Province Cricket Umpires Association, we have a general ruling for all our umpires to be consistent. If the pitch is out by less than 30 centimeters, then we will allow play to continue on that day on that pitch. We will inform the captain of the home side as well as the captain of the opposing side, the away team, that the pitch length is out, but we will not adjust any crease or pitch markings for that day. 30 centimeters sounds like quite a distance. However, if you take 30 centimeters out of 20.12 meters, it is only 1.5% variance, whether too long or too short. So we are quite happy that it is not a dramatic change to the length of the pitch. If we measure the pitch and the pitch is more than 30 centimeters too long or too short from middle stump to middle stump, then you will have to get a hold of the ground staff. If there is no ground staff, you put it in the hands of the home captain to remark the creases and the pitch so that the length of the pitch from middle stump to middle stump is 20.12 meters. That is why Abdullah told us yesterday that umpires are required to be at the field at least 45 minutes before the scheduled start of play. That is to be able to remark the pitch if need be. That is one of the duties that we carry out before the start of a day's play. Quite interestingly, you'll see that we are given half of the width of the pitch on the left-hand side. And for your exam, you will get asked about the lengths and widths of the pitch as well as crease markings. Where there is an arrow pointing from one line to one line, and you see that the pitch width has been halved on the left-hand side of this diagram, take note of those arrows and be sure to give the correct answer if they are only looking for half of a measurement. I'm not sure why they request half of a measurement, but that does happen on a couple of questions in the exam. So that's a little pointer for you to be aware of when you get to your online exam. Who selects and prepares the playing pitch for a match? Law tells us that before the match, the ground authority shall be responsible for the selection and preparation of the pitch. And then during the match, the umpires shall control the use and maintenance of the pitch. Can we change the match pitch during or before a match? Let's see what the law says. Law tells us that the pitch shall not be changed during the match unless the umpires decide that it is dangerous or unreasonable for play to continue on it, and then only with the consent of both captains can the pitch be changed. Here at Western Province Cricket Umpires Association, we have bylaws made by Western Province Cricket Association that say that if a pitch is in unplayable condition, however, you can move it with the consent of both captains from one strip to the next. Okay, because at any given cricket pitch that you come across, you are likely to have a square that has multiple pitches on it, and sometimes the pitch that has been prepared is not as good as the pitch or the strip next to it, and so you can use the strip next to the pitch if both captains agree. If there is a B field next to where you're supposed to play, and that B field did not get as much rain as the A field, you can also move the match from one field to the next. But according to Western Province Cricket Association bylaws, that decision will be made by the local league's person in charge of that field. So that is the protocol for us umpires to call that local league's authority before we move the match from one field to the next. But if we are simply looking to move the match from one pitch on the square to the next strip on the square, we can do that with the consent of both captains. What does the law say about the size of the pitch in junior cricket? Law tells us that the governing body for cricket in the country concerned shall determine the length of the pitch for junior cricket. So in some countries, the junior cricket pitch length is the same as the senior cricket pitch length, as I've just shown on the previous slide. In other countries, they do reduce the pitch length for under 11, under 9, under 7 cricket. That is Law 6, the pitch done. Next, we move on to Law 7, the creases. Here is a picture of what used to be called Senves Oval in Potchefstroom. It is now called the JB Marks Oval, showing us a real life pitch and the creases. So the line closest to me, going from left to right of screen, is the popping crease. Perpendicular to the popping crease closest to me is the one return crease, and you also have another return crease on the opposite side of the popping crease. And then the stumps are pitched on the bowling crease. And then in limited overs cricket, we have the offside wide guidelines, 43 centimeters inside of the return creases. Please note that in law, we mainly speak about more day cricket, multiple innings per side, or two innings per side, where you will see, for example, in a test match that you do not have offside wide guidelines, and you won't find them anywhere in the law book either. These offside wide guidelines are in many limited overs playing conditions. Close to the stumps, 1 foot wide of the middle stump is the protected area marking. The protected area is spoken about in detail in Law 41. Because Law 41 is not examined in Cricket South Africa's Level 1 exam, we do not go through Law 41 nor Law 42 in this course. However, it is included in the presentation that has been sent to you, and the presentation that we are using currently, just that we will not present Law 41 and 42. For any of you who have not yet received or downloaded the link for the presentation, please put your email address in the chat box, and I will send you the email with the course material where you can download the presentation in its entirety. We've now learned the names of the creases. We now need to learn the measurements of these creases. So on the right, we have a recap of the names. We've got the return crease, we've got the popping crease, and we've got the bowling crease. What are the measurements of these creases? Let's start with, for me, the most important measurement. I call it the no ball measurement. The measurement between the bowling crease and the popping crease is 1.22 meters. And then the measurement of the return crease in its entirety is a minimum of 2.44 meters. And then the measurement of the popping crease is a minimum of 3.66 meters. So both the return creases on either side of the stumps can, in theory, be drawn all the way to the boundary, but law requires that they are painted to a minimum of 2.44 meters. The popping crease can be painted as well all the way to the boundary. That is not usually the case. Law requires a minimum of 3.66 meters to be painted. What you often find is if you have multiple strips of pitches laid out close to each other, they will share one long popping crease that goes all the way across the square. And so that minimum of 3.66 meters requirement is easily met. If you look at those three measurements that I've just gone through, it's very easy to remember all of them as long as you remember the first one. The no ball measurement I told you between the bowling crease and the popping crease is 1.22 meters. If you multiply that by 2, you get 2.44 meters, which is the measurement of the return crease. It is the minimum measurement for the return crease. And then if you multiply 1.22 by 3, you get 3.66, which is the minimum measurement for the popping crease. A practical piece of advice: how do you measure these creases? Which edge of each line do you measure to and from? You will notice that the arrows help you in this regard. And you will notice that it is always the inside edge or the back edge. Why? Because the stumps are pitched at the back edge of the bowling crease, and all other measurements need to be the edge closest to the stumps. So the inside edge of the popping crease, or let's call it the back edge of the popping crease to the back edge of the bowling crease, is your measurement of 1.22 meters. The inside edge of both return creases gives you the measurement for the bowling crease, the width of the bowling crease, that is 2.64 meters. Inside edge and inside edge are the two closest edges to the stumps. So that is why you measure the return creases from their inside edges. In total, the names and the marks of the creases, as well as the length of the pitch and the width of the pitch in the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam, is 10 marks. So please make sure that you know your creases, you know your measurements. That will be an easy 10 marks in the exam if you do know the measurements. You do not need to learn the measurements for the protected area. As mentioned, that is in Law 41, which is not examined in Cricket South Africa's Level 1 exam. Note that the exam is all true or false or multiple choice, so you don't need to memorize all of these measurements. You just need to know sort of in range what the numbers are. And do remember that you sometimes get asked half of a measurement. For example, there will be a line drawn through middle stump to middle stump, and then the arrows will point to that line. For example, cutting the popping crease measurement in half. So what is half of 3.66? It is 1.83 meters. So be wary or be careful to note the arrows and where they point to, so that if you are asked for half of the measurement of a crease, then you give half of the measurement of a particular crease. Last law that I will be presenting this evening is Law 8, the wickets. The wickets are made up of 3 stumps and 2 bails, and these are their measurements. When correctly pitched, the width from the outside of the off stump to the outside of the leg stump should be 22.86 meters or 9 inches. The length of the stumps from the base of the stump, which should be at ground level, to the top of the stumps where the bail would sit, is 71.12 centimeters. The bails, when in position on top of the stumps, shall not project more than 1.27 centimeters above the stumps. They shall fit between the stumps without forcing them out of the vertical. Devices aimed at protecting player safety by limiting the distance that a bail can travel off the stumps will be allowed, subject to the approval of the governing body for the match and the ground authority. I have never seen such a device, but from the explanation, it's basically a string that is on the top of the stump connected to the one end of the bail, so that when the bail is removed from the top of the stump, it does not go far, and that will prevent it from flying into a player's face, as was the case with Mark Boucher. This incident pictured below ended his cricketing career, or at least his playing career. I'm sure you all know he is now a very successful coach around the world, coaching Mumbai Indians in the IPL. Very important nowadays as well, in lots of playing conditions around the world, if wicket keepers are standing up to the stumps, they need to wear a helmet. You can see here that Mark Boucher was not wearing a helmet when he was standing up to the stumps. This batter was bowled, and as the ball hit the stumps, the one bail flew up into Mark Boucher's left eye, and that was unfortunately the end of his playing career. He feared that he would never see out of his left eye because of the damage that the bale did to his eye, but fortunately he did regain some eyesight, but was never able to play again because it wasn't a complete regaining of eyesight on that particular eye. Somebody asked yesterday, what happens when we dispense with the bales from the top of the stumps? Why would we dispense with the bales from the top of the stumps? It's usually when it is windy and the wind keeps blowing the bales off the top of the stumps. Law tells us that the umpires may agree to dispense with the use of bales if necessary. If they so agree, then no bales shall be used at either end. You can't have bales on the one set of stumps and no bales on the other set of stumps. If you take bales off on the one set of stumps, then you need to take bales off both sets of stumps and play without them until conditions permit to reuse bales on top of the stumps. So here Abdullah took through candidates doing a level 1 face-to-face course as to how some of the laws change when you are playing without bales. And Abdullah, please let me know if there is no sound on your video.
And I'm very old now, and I said, no, this is the belt, which is wasting too much time to continue picking up bells. So now we decided to remove the bells. And usually when you decide to remove the bells, there's only one reason. The wind keeps on blowing. And when you do decide to remove the bells from the stumps, you need to remove it from both ends. You cannot have a game where you say, I'm only removing the bells from this end because this is the way it keeps on falling off. Unfortunately not. The law is quite clear on this. You do decide to remove the bells because the wind blows off. You need to remove it from both ends. So now we decided to remove the bells from both ends. So now the law changes. All the law now tells us once you decide to remove the bells, is the ball now just needs to touch any of the stumps. So now no need to keep it out the ground, throw it out the ground, do these. People can do it if they want to, but not necessary. The law tells us all that now needs to happen is for the ball to touch the stumps. If now, from umpiring point of view, you now need to keep an eye on it. Because remember, the ball just needs to touch the stumps and it can be difficult. I had arguments already in my umpiring career to keep up the bells. And the fielding side would say, I'm trying to kiss the stumps. Batters, obviously, the batters going to say, no, you didn't touch the stumps. What you need to do is you need to go and consult your colleague. Ask your colleague, you read the stump? Yes or no? If you're not sure, what do you do as umpires? You never goes to the batter. You must be 100% sure that either of you saw the ball as it's touching the stumps. If not, the battlefield, the batter.
Okay, one of our tools that we can use as an umpire to make sure that bales do not fly off the top of the stumps repeatedly is to have heavy bales, either bought or made to be heavier than the normal bale that we fine provided by the cricket clubs where we umpire. So normal bales, the weight is plus minus 20 to 25 grams per bale. A nice heavy bale would be somewhere between 40 and 50 grams per bale. And they are not easily found. A lot of our heavy bales that we have over the years as umpires have been made by punching a hole through the bale and putting lead in where wood used to be, and obviously lead being heavier than wood makes that particular bale heavier than it usually was. That is all from me this evening until our question and answer session. I'm now going to hand over to Abdullah for laws 9, 10, and 11. Over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you so much, Tom. Good evening to you, and good evening to the rest of the attendees. Just give me a second while I get my slides in order. So I'm kicking off with law number 9, and it covers the preparation and the maintenance of the playing area after the game has started. So before the game has started, in terms of how you prepare the pitch, the square, the outfield, that is then up to the ground authority, and they can prepare it as best they see fit. But as soon as the game has started, the law guides us on exactly how we need to prepare and maintain the playing area. And yesterday I mentioned the purpose of this course. We're focusing on the laws of cricket, which covers more-day cricket, test matches as an example, 4-day provincial cricket in South Africa. I know many other countries play 4-day cricket as well. Some play 3-day cricket, 2 days, but this focuses on more-day cricket, games where there are more than one innings or more than one days of play. So now the game has started. So how do you maintain and prepare the playing area? Firstly, speaks about mowing and mowing of the pitch and the outfield. So law tells us that you need to both the pitch and the outfield to be mown on each day of the match which play is expected to take place. I'll use test match cricket as an example, which spans over 5 days. So let's say Monday was day 1. Game started at 10, and let's say it closes at 5. So in terms of day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5, the law wants the pitch and the outfield to be mown on day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. And the reason why they want the pitch and the outfield to be mown, they're trying to keep the conditions exactly the same over the 5 days. Yes, I know the pitch do deteriorate over 5 days, but there's nothing we can do about the deterioration. But in terms of the length of the grass, you'll be amazed how quickly the grass grow, especially the pitch. We'll get to covers later on, where it tells us that you need to cover the pitch after the day's play, and those covers stays on overnight. You will be amazed how quickly the grass grow overnight. So the lawmakers, they are trying to make conditions of the pitch and the outfield the same for both sides over the 5 days. Hence, they want the pitch and the outfield to be mowed. Sometimes conditions doesn't allow for mowing. The laws tell us if it's not then possible to mow the outfield, says the ground authority, then just to notify the captains and umpires of the procedure that they will adopt to mow if there are rain around. So now we know the pitch and the outfield needs to be mowed on subsequent days, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. So when do we mow the pitch and the outfield? Let's start with the pitch. There's a window period for the pitch to be mowed. It needs to be done before 30 minutes or when play is about to start. Let's say in our test match, play starting at 10 o'clock. So the law tells us by 9:30 that pitch needs to be mowed. Doesn't give us an exact time. It's all it tells us is by 9:30 pitch needs to be mowed. So practically what happens, and I can use a test match as an example. So the playing conditions for test match states that there are 4 umpires. There's 2 on-field umpires. There's a TV umpire, and then there's a 4th umpire. So one of the duties of the 4th umpire is the 4th umpire needs to supervise the mowing of the pitch. So our test match starting on day 1 started at 10 o'clock, ended at 5 o'clock. So the morning of day 2, play will start at 10 o'clock again. Usually about between 9:15 and 9:25, the pitch will now be mowed. And the 4th umpire then needs to supervise the mowing. So when it comes to mowing of the outfield, not later than 15 minutes before play is about to start. So if on day 2, play is going to start at 10 o'clock, by 9:45, mowing of the outfield to be completed. So just to emphasize again, timing of mowing for the pitch, half an hour. By 9:30, if it's a 10 o'clock start, the mowing of the pitch needs to be done. And mowing of the outfield, 9:45. Clearing of debris from the pitch. So what is this debris? This debris is those loose stones, those pebbles that comes loose from the turf wicket with batters running on the pitch, bowlers delivering the ball, those loose pieces of turf, loose small pebbles, the law calls it debris. They then get scattered across the pitch. So the law allows for this debris, i.e. loose stones, small pebbles, to be cleared. But the law also guides us when to clear the debris from the pitch. Firstly, you're allowed to clear the debris from the pitch before the start of each day's play. And it needs to be done after the completion of mowing and before any rolling. And not earlier than 30, not later than 10 minutes before play is about to start. So that's the first instance when you're allowed to clear the debris. Secondly, you're allowed to clear the debris between innings. And this needs to be done before rolling is to take place. Why must this happen before rolling? If you're not going to clear it before rolling, what's going to happen? The roller is going to come over the pitch and it's going to roll all those debris, all those small stones, pebbles into the pitch. So we don't want that to happen. That's why we say, yes, clear the pitch from debris, but it needs to be done before rolling. At all interval for meals, you're allowed to clear the pitch from debris. So how do we clear the pitch from debris? Again, the law guides us, and it tells us it needs to be done by sweeping. So sweeping, we use a broom to clear the debris from the pitch. Again, important role of the 4th umpire. The 4th umpire needs to supervise this clearing of debris. So there are 3 instances where the law allows you to clear the debris. And how do you clear it? By sweeping. But the law also tells us that there are times where you do get brittle pitches. You often find the subcontinent pitches is not as hard as pitches in Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and England. So if you do have a brittle pitch and the umpires do think that if the ground staff is going to use a broom to clear the debris, it might be detrimental to the surface of the pitch. You might, if you start sweeping, it might take out huge chunks of the pitch. If that is the case, the law then allows the curator to not use a broom, but to clear the debris by the use of his or her hand, and not to sweep if you think it's going to be detrimental to the surface. So the ground staff will then clear the debris by just using their hands. So when it comes to rolling of the pitch, and again, this is not rolling before the game has started. So our test match, let's say day one is on Monday, starting at 10 o'clock. So before the start of the test match, to prepare the pitch, the curator can roll the pitch to his or her heart's content. They can roll for as long as they want, which rollers they decide to use. That is their prerogative. But once the game has started, the law guides us in terms of rolling of the pitch. Let's see what this guidance is. So in terms of the frequency and the duration of the rolling, again, this is now after the game has started. So after the game has started, the pitch can then only be rolled in the following instances. Before the start of each subsequent day's play. So in our test match, day one, Monday, day one, 10 o'clock start of play, 5 o'clock end of the day's play. So day two, before the start of day two, you're allowed to roll the pitch. Before the start of day three, you're allowed to roll the pitch. Before the start of day 4 and day 5, you are allowed to roll the pitch. So that's the first instance after now the game has started when you're allowed to roll the pitch. The second instance is before the start of each innings. So day one, 10 o'clock, let's say South Africa won the toss, batting, and then they get dismissed, let's say for 200 all out. And let's say they are playing Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka will now bat in their first innings. The captain of Sri Lanka will have the option to roll. So before the start of each subsequent innings, the captain of the then batting side, is allowed to roll. So in terms of the frequency, after the game has started, you're only allowed to roll before the start of each innings and before the start of each subsequent day's play. So now we know when, before the start of an innings or before the start of day 2, 3, 4, and 5. How long are you allowed to roll? All the law tells us is not more than 7 minutes. So can you roll for 5 minutes? Yes, you can. Can you roll for 4 minutes? Of course you can. Can you roll for 1 minute? Yes, you can. All the law tells us not more than 7 minutes. So can you roll for 8 minutes? No, you cannot roll for 8 minutes. So in terms of the timing permitted for these rolling. So now we know when and we know how long. Not more than 7. It needs to happen before the start of each innings, and it needs to happen before the start of each subsequent day's play, i.e. before the start of day 2, 3, 4, and 5 of our test match. So now there's a window period for rolling to take place before the start of each subsequent day's play. And you have a 20-minute window period. So if on day 2 play is about to start at 10 o'clock, our 20-minute window period is from 9:30 till 9:50. So this is the window period, and only that 20-minute window period, that is where rolling takes place on each subsequent day's play, i.e. day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. And again, the fourth umpire will supervise the rolling. So anytime between 9:30 and 9:50. So if the curator wants to start at 9:30 and the captain wants for 7 minutes, no issue. We can start at 9:30. And the latest rolling can take place is 9:50. So your window, you've got that 20-minute window period. So that is now before each subsequent day's play. So in terms of the rolling between innings, we'll see later when I do intervals, there's always a 10-minute change of innings interval. And the rolling between innings will take place in this 10 minutes. So practically, what happens? Let's start with the change of innings. What usually happens is, in our test match, South Africa, Sri Lanka, let's say South Africa is missed for 300. Sri Lanka will now go bat. What will now happen is the umpires will go to the Sri Lankan captain and ask the Sri Lankan captain, Captain, do you want rolling? And if yes, how long you want? And which roller do you want? So at most international grounds, they have 3 rollers at their disposal. They'll have a big roller, which is on the right. They'll have a medium one, and then a small one, which is like a hand roller. So practically, as soon as South Africa is dismissed, or usually when the 9th wicket falls, one of the on-field umpires will ask the batting captain or tell him or her, think about the rolling. As soon as the 10th wicket falls, please let us know. So we will then, as soon as the 10th wicket falls, the batting captain will then needs to inform us which roller. Let's say he or she wants the big one, and we'll ask how long. 7 minutes. We will then relay that info to the fourth umpire, who in turn will relay it to the curator. So that is practically when it comes to the change of innings, how we or how the umpires handle it. When it comes to the rolling on each subsequent day's play, practically how it happens, whoever's batting on the morning of day 2, let's use in our test match, let's say Sri Lanka is batting on the morning of day 2. So the fourth umpire, and umpires usually gets to the ground hour and a half to 2 hours before play is about to start. Teams also get there usually early because the batting side will go to have some nets, fielding side will go through a few fielding drills, and the bowlers will loosen up, so they also there early. So practically what happens, the fourth umpire will then go to the then batting captain, and let's say is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is batting at the time. The fourth umpire will then ask the Sri Lankan captain, do you want rolling? If yes, how long? And then also which roller. The Sri Lankan captain will then need to inform the fourth umpire, yes, umpire, I want rolling. Let's say he or she wants it for 5 minutes, and they say, I want the medium roller to be used. The fourth umpire will then relay that to the curator. The fourth umpire then needs to supervise that rolling. And in the previous slide, I mentioned that window period for that rolling to take place is from 9:30 up until 9:50. There's a 20-minute window period. So if play is going to start at 10 o'clock, there's a 20-minute window period for rolling to take place before the start of the day, and the fourth umpire needs to supervise it. Are you allowed to water the pitch once the game has started? So in our test match at the end of day 1, is the curator allowed to take the hose pipe and water the pits? Absolutely not. Law is clear. Once the game has started, pits not to be watered on any day at any time. Are you allowed to remark the creases? Yes, the law allows for it. Often happen, batters running, bowlers landing with their front foot on the popping crease, especially the popping crease, sometimes do disappear. The white paint disappears. The law allows for the remarking of creases, and it usually happens during intervals. And again, practically, the fourth umpire will supervise the remarking of the creases during your lunch and during your tea intervals. Are you allowed to maintain footholds? Yes, the law allows for this. It is vital that the bowlers have a stable area to land on, especially the fast bowlers. They need to feel secure in when putting that foot down that the ground is stable. And it often happens, bowlers landing in more or less the same place. They are often the turf start disappear. The hole comes where their foot lands, ball after ball after ball. The law allows for those footholds to be maintained, and the ground staff usually at the end of the day's play, they will re-turf those footholds. So the law allows for it. The law allows for the securing of those footholds. And we've often seen if the pitch is a bit moist, if there were rain around, the law also allow for sawdust to be put where that front foot lands. So in terms of covering of the pitch, and again, before the game starts, covering of the pitch up to the curator and his or her ground staff. So now the law kicks off by saying, for the game, responsibility of the curator. But once the game has started, the law wants on each night of the match and in inclement weather, the pitch to be covered. So in our test match, on day one, play starts at 10 o'clock, ends at 5 o'clock. Players then leaves the field at 5 o'clock. What the curator will do, if any footholds needs to be returfed, they will do it. And after that, the pitch needs to be covered. Also, if it starts raining, law tell us, please cover the pitch. So law tell us the whole pitch needs to be covered and 1.22 meters beyond at each end, and bowlers run-ups where possible also needs to be covered. So in terms of the law only speaks about covering the pitch and bowlers run-ups, but we do know in playing conditions, and we'll see in a slide or two, that much more than just the pitch gets covered these days. But in terms of the law, they only speak about the pitch and, if possible, bowlers run-ups. But in later slides, we will see what practically actually happens. So in terms of the removal of covers, I mentioned earlier that overnight you need to cover, the ground staff needs to cover the pitch. Now those covers needs to be removed the next morning as soon as practicable. The law doesn't give us a time, but as soon as practicable, please remove the covers that was put on overnight. Also, if it rain, Lord said to us in the previous slide, please cover the pitch. But now it stopped raining. So now Lord tell us, if it stopped raining, you then may remove the covers as soon as conditions allow. This is just an example. in one of the test venues in England. This is what they use to cover their pitch. I know that different grounds uses different methods, but this particular ground in England, this is what they use. Let's look at this video and to see how they cover this pitch.
This is the scene at Trent Bridge, Nottingham. Second day, the game between Nottinghamshire and Durham. The last week started to rain. Special cover was being brought into play and brought to the centre to cover the wicket. Although it's daytime, the lights are on, which just assists the batsman's view a little. Players trudge off into the pavilion. Some of the members have already got their umbrellas up. So this is rather disconsolate scene as this light drizzle has been falling since the start of play has got a little heavier. We all hope that it won't last for very long. So this is that's the county hall with a green roof, the headquarters of the Nottinghamshire County Council. And over there is the world-renowned, as it said on it, Trent Bridge Inn. So, it's Michael Parkinson saying cheerio for now.
You'll find different grounds using different methods. This is one of the test venues in Sri Lanka. And you can see they cover the whole field, not just the pitch, not just the square, but the whole field, including the outfield. The playing conditions allow for this. So in South Africa, what we do is we also use these plastic covers and we cover the whole of the square as well as the bowlers run-ups. South Africa has most of the provincial venues have very, very good drainage. So only the square gets covered. So the match pitch and the rest of the other pitches on the square, and then the bowlers run-ups. The last law that I'm covering this evening are intervals. So what is an interval? The following, as per the law, are classified as scheduled intervals. These intervals are set before the game starts. They are usually set by the governing body of cricket for that particular competition. So what are examples of these scheduled intervals that were set before the game started? First example is the period between close of play on day one and the start of play the next day. So let's use our test match as an example that spans over 5 days. So day one starts at 10 and ends at 5. Day two will again start at 10. So that period between 5 o'clock on day one and 10 o'clock on day two is seen in the law as a scheduled interval. Interval between innings, also seen in the law as a scheduled interval. Interval for meals, which is your lunch and your tea intervals, scheduled interval. Interval for drinks, also a scheduled interval. And then lastly, any other agreed interval. An example of any other agreed interval, many years ago, the late Queen decided to visit one of the Ashes test matches, and she could only she was the only time that she was available was between, I think it was 11:30 and 11:45, but that was like smack bang in the middle of the morning session. So what they decided before the game started, there would be a 15-minute interval from 11:30 till 11:45. So the players were lining up on the field. The Queen came down, shook all the players' hands, and then left. That's just an example of any other agreed interval. But these are 5 instances that the law sees as scheduled intervals. These intervals are set by the governing body of cricket for that competition before the game starts. The governing body for Test match cricket is the International Cricket Council, and they set the following times for interval for meals, like your lunch interval. For Test matches, it spans 40 minutes. Your tea interval, 20 minutes. Your interval for drinks, 4 minutes. Interval between innings, 10 minutes. So the governing body set out these scheduled intervals for Test match cricket. So you won't find exact times in the law. The law leaves it up to the governing body that runs cricket for in that particular area. So for Test matches, in terms of your lunch and your tea, 40 minutes lunch, 20 minutes tea. But all the law tells us when it comes to how long your interval should be. So whatever was agreed upon, and let's use lunch as an example. So in Test matches, lunch is 40 minutes. So all the law tells us, if you agree that lunch is 40 minutes, like the ICC said in Test match cricket, lunch is 40 minutes. That 40 minutes shall start from the call of time before the interval and the call of play on resumption after the interval. So practically how this will happen, I'll use an example. So our Test match start on day 1, start at 10 o'clock. And in Test matches, they play 2-hour sessions. So from 10 till 12, that will be our first session. Our lunch will then be from 12 till 12:40. So what the law tells us is that when, let's say, on day 1, you're close to 12 o'clock, you look at your watch and you see now it is exactly 12 o'clock and you've only bowled 3 balls in the over. Do you take now lunch immediately? No, you cannot just take lunch midway. You need to complete the over first. And let's say you bowl the further 3 balls, and now lunch at 12:03. It's the end of the over. So what now will happen is the umpire will now call over, time, and lunch. So now what the law is telling us is, from the moment you've called time, which we've called at 12:03, from that moment, lunch needs to be whatever duration you decided. So we know it's 40 minutes in Test matches. So when you call time, it was 12:03. When should the first ball be bowled after lunch? Yes, 40 minutes later. At 12:43, the first ball needs to be bowled after lunch. So practically how we make sure that the first ball gets bowled at 12:43, umpires will take the field 5 minutes before play start. So at 12:38, umpires will take the field, followed by the fielding side, followed by the batting side, followed by the two batters. And that's how they make sure that at 12:43, the first ball gets bowled. So the point I'm trying to make is, law tell us that your duration of your interval should be that 40 minutes, like in our test match. And it starts from the moment you call time, and it should be, and from that moment, first ball needs to be bowled 40 minutes later. So whatever time you stopped, let's say if you stopped at exactly 12 o'clock, the over's done at 12 o'clock, first ball needs to be bowled at 12:40. If you stopped at 12:01, first ball needs to be bowled at 12:41. Same principle apply to your tea time. When it comes to the interval between innings, 10 minutes. And that 10 minutes shall be from the second that that last wicket fell, and the first ball needs to be bowled 10 minutes later. So let's say the 10th wicket fell at 11:13. The first ball needs to be bowled at 11:23, 10 minutes later. So for many years, the law were quite rigid when it came to the timings of your, especially your intervals. If lunch is at 12 o'clock, we will take lunch at 12 o'clock, no matter what happens. It can be snowing, raining, whatever. Lunch is at 12, and let's say our tea's at 3 o'clock. There was no flexibility in the timings whatsoever. But as time went by, the lawmakers saw that they need to build in some flexibility into the timings of especially our lunch and especially our tea times. And why is this need for this flexibility to allow it to be shifted, maybe forward, maybe back? Why the need for this flexibility is you want to try to play as much cricket as possible. You want to maximize time during your day. And for this reason, the lawmakers decided, no man, we cannot be rigid and stick to teas at lunches at 12 and teas at 3, no matter what. We need to build in some flexibility. If things happen, let's say if it rains, we need to be able to maybe play a bit with our lunch and our tea time, maybe bring it forward, maybe bring it a bit back. Let's see what flexibility the lawmakers brought in terms of these scheduled intervals. We will start with the interval between innings. What flexibility did they bring in when it comes to the interval between innings? After this, we'll go to the flexibility they brought into the lunch interval, how we can move our lunch interval, and then after that, I'll cover how we can change our tea intervals. They start with the interval between innings. So the first flexibility they brought in is they tell us that if an innings ends 10 minutes or less before the close of play, it will be stumps then, no further play possible. Then they go on by saying, yes, you now ended earlier, but you will not start earlier the next day. I'll use an example to illustrate this. In our test match, start of play is 10 o'clock, close of play is 5 o'clock. At 16:52, Sri Lanka gets dismissed. South Africa take the 10th wicket. 16:52. So what happens next? Remember, our close of play is at 5 o'clock. So now this clause can be activated, because what this clause tells us is, if an innings ends 10 minutes or less before the close of play time, no further play then possible on that day. It will be stumps on that day. So 16:52, because this is 16 minutes or less before the close of play, it will then be stumps. So yes, we ended 8 minutes earlier, but now the second part of this clause tells us no change to be made the next day. So we will not start 8 minutes earlier. But you can only activate this clause if an innings ends 10 minutes or less. If South Africa was to be bowled out, or Sri Lanka was to be bowled out at 16:48, can you say it's the end of the day's play? No, you cannot say it's the end of the day's play, because you cannot activate this clause. Because why? It's 12 minutes to go till the end of play. To activate this clause, it needs to be 10 or less. So any time from 16:50 onwards, the side gets dismissed, 10 minutes or less to the close of play, it will be close of play for that day. It will be stumps for that day. And you will not start earlier the next day. This is now the first instance where the lawmakers brought in some flexibility when it came to the interval between innings. Second instance where they brought in a bit of flexibility for when it comes to the interval between innings. And I'll use an example. It's gonna make it much clearer than to read this huge paragraph. So if a captain declares an innings during a scheduled interval or an interruption of more than 10 minutes, you will incorporate the change of innings interval into your scheduled interval or interruption. I'll use an example to illustrate this. In our test match, I'll use 2 other sides now. Let's say India is playing England. In our test match, India batting, let's say, is on day 2, they 500 for the loss of 4 wickets. So we get to, we're on day 2, we get to 12 o'clock, umpire looks at his or her watch, they see it is exactly 12 o'clock, the final ball gets bowled at 12 o'clock. It's now lunchtime. The umpire calls over, time and lunch. When must the first ball be bowled after lunch? Correct, at 12:40. So now everyone's off the field. We're now going to enjoy our lunchtime. At 12:20, there's a knock on the umpire's room, and it's Rohit Sharma asking to come in. Yeah, of course we'll say, Rohit, no problem, come in. Umpires, I am declaring. So now what will happen next is the umpires now needs to go and inform Ben Stokes, who's the captain of England, that Rohit just declared. There will now be a change of innings interval. 12:20, Rohit informed us. So from 12:20 till 12:30, there'll be a change of innings interval. So what point number 2 is telling us is, seeing that this declaration happened in lunchtime, we will now incorporate this change of innings interval into our lunchtime. No need to make any adjustment. We'll just incorporate it into our lunchtime. So practically what we'll do is there'll be a change of innings from 12:20 till 12:30. Umpires will go to Ben Stokes, informing him of the declaration. Umpires will also ask Ben, do you want rolling? Yes. How long, Ben? And which roller you want? Umpires will relay that message to the 4th umpire, who in turn will relay it to the curator. So what point number 2 is saying is, because this our change of innings happened during our lunch interval, which was more than 10 minutes duration, lunch is 40, we will incorporate the 10-minute change of innings interval into our lunchtime. That's all point number 2 is telling us. But there is a but. And this but is, I'll use it as same example. 12 o'clock, we took lunch. First ball needs to be bowled by 12:40. But at 12:35, Rohit knocks on the umpire's door and say, umpires, I am declaring. So just remember, when we took lunch at 12 o'clock, first ball needs to be bowled at 12:40. But at 12:35, Rohit knocks on the umpire's door, say, umpires, I'm declaring. And now the law tells us is, because there's now only 5 minutes left of the interval, And it's unfair to expect now the now batting side, England, openers to get ready, to pad up, and also take into account the law allows the now batting captain to get rolling, and the max time of rolling is 7 minutes. So we need to be fair on the now batting side. Rolling needs to take place, and for the openers to pad up. So we cannot expect the openers and rolling in that 5 minutes. We cannot expect that first ball to be bowled at 12:40. So because the declaration now happened at 12:35, now there will be a 10-minute change of innings from 12:35 till 12:45. So first ball will be bowled at 12:45. And during this now 10-minute change of innings, rolling to take place if the batting captain wants it. So that is when it comes to the allowance for innings between how the lawmakers build in flexibility to when it comes to the allowance for innings, the change of innings interval. Before I get to what flexibility they build into the lunch interval, they decided on this clause, to incorporate this clause in the law by saying, if at any time through adverse conditions, whether it's ground weather or light, usually adverse conditions, let's say it's dark or it's raining, those are my two examples, and players needs to leave the field, the law allows for your lunch or your tea interval to be adjusted, to be changed. But you need the consent of the two umpires and both captains. So they brought in this clause where they allow for this flexibility at any time to play around with your lunch and your tea interval. But it must be players had to leave the field through adverse conditions, i.e., let's say rain or bad light. It cannot be, and I had this instance many years ago. It was in a club game, and about 8-9 years ago. This was not before COVID. In the Western Cape, in Cape Town, we still played 2-day cricket. So there was New Zealand and South Africa was playing, and it was the sevens final, and whoever wins it going to win the trophy. So both captains came to the umpires asking, umpires, can we have lunch a little bit earlier because we all want to watch the sevens final. Unfortunately, I said to them not, even though I also wanted to watch it, but the law does not allow us, only allows us to play around with our lunch or our tea interval through adverse conditions, not in this example where they wanted to bring it forward because of wanting to watch the seventh final live. So there's this clause that at any time, if through adverse conditions, you are allowed to bring your lunch or your tea interval forward. But there's one condition, both umpires and both captains needs to agree. There's no agreement, especially from the captains. One captain say, no, I don't want to change my lunch. I want my lunch to stay at 12 o'clock. You cannot then alter your lunch. So there's this clause that the lawmakers brought in. It's this catch-all clause. But they've also brought in specific instances where something happens, and we're first going to focus on our lunch. When these instances happen, and if it happens, you will take an early lunch. You don't need captains to agree. If it happens, you will take an early lunch. So what is this first instance? When an innings ends 10 minutes or less to lunch, you will take lunch immediately. And the change of innings interval will then be incorporated into your lunch interval. So in our test match between England and India, lunch is at 12 o'clock. At 11:54, England gets dismissed. What happens next? Law tell us you can activate clause 1, this particular clause, because the innings ended less than 10 minutes to go to lunch. So at 11:54, you can take an early lunch. So this is now a change of innings that happened 10 minutes or less to lunch, take an early lunch. So lunch will now be at 11:54. When will the first ball needs to be bowled after lunch? Well done. It is 12:34, 40 minutes later. First ball needs to be bowled at 12:34. So you can only activate this clause if an innings ends 10 minutes or less. Needs to be 10 minutes or less, then you can take an early lunch. If an innings should end, if England was dismissed at 11:48, what happens next? Can you activate this clause? No, you cannot. Why? Because it's 12 minutes to go to lunch. You can only activate this clause 10 minutes or less. So in this example, where it's 12 minutes to go to lunch, you cannot take an early lunch. What will happen now is there will now be a change of innings interval from 11:48 till 11:58. And you'll probably play 1 over and then you'll take lunch. So this is the first flexibility that the lawmakers brought in when it comes to your lunchtime. And no need for captains to agree. You don't need to go to captains. Captains, do you want to take lunch? Law tell us if this happens, innings ends 10 minutes or less, you'll take an early lunch. That's the first flexibility. The second flexibility that the lawmakers brought in when it came to lunch. If through adverse conditions like rain, bad light, and let's use rain as an example, and players needs to leave the field 10 minutes or less to lunch, you will take an early lunch. An example, lunch is at 12 o'clock. At 11:51, it starts to rain and players leaves the field. What happens next? Law tell us you can activate this particular clause. No need for captains to agree. Activate this clause. Because it's 10 minutes or less and it rained, players had to leave the field. Activate this clause and lunch will then be taken at 11:51. When must the first ball be bowled after lunch? Weather conditions permitting? Well done. At 12:31, 40 minutes later. And again, you can only activate this clause, no need for captains to agree, if it rains 10 minutes or less to your lunch interval. So now let's focus on tea time. What flexibility did the lawmakers bring into the tea interval? Let's have a look. If an innings ends 30 minutes or less before the agreed time for tea, you shall take tea immediately and you'll incorporate the 10-minute change of innings interval into your tea time. I'll use an example to illustrate this. Let's say our tea time is at 3 o'clock. So India batting, India dismissed at 14:35. What happens next? You can activate this clause. You'll take tea immediately. Why do you take tea immediately? Because this clause tells us if an innings ends, India was dismissed, 25 minutes to tea. And this clause say 30 minutes or less to tea. You can activate this clause. So 14:35, we will take tea immediately. We know our tea is 20 minutes. When must the first ball be bowled after tea? Correct, at 14:55. But an innings must end 30 minutes or less before tea to take an early tea. So same principle that actually applies to the lunch. The only difference is lunch was when an innings ended 10 minutes or less to lunch, you'll take an early lunch. In this instance, when an innings ends 30 minutes or less to tea, will take an early tea. So same principle, just the timings, 10 minutes for lunch, 30 minutes for tea. Point 2. When 30 minutes remains before the agreed time for tea, there's already an interval between innings in progress. What now you need to do? Law now tell us is you need to resume play at the end of the 10-minute interval. I'll use an example to illustrate point number 2. Our tea time is at 3 o'clock. At 14:25, India gets dismissed. Can you take an early tea? No, at this stage you cannot activate clause 1 because clause 1 tells us an innings needs to end 30 minutes or less to tea. And in my example, or in this example, the innings ended 14:25, which is 35 minutes to go to tea. So you cannot activate clause 1. So now the law tells us you now need to take, because this is 45 minutes to tea, 35 minutes to tea, you now need to take a 10-minute change of innings interval. Your change of innings interval will be from 14:25. First ball needs to be bowled at 14:35. England will now come into bat. They will bat from 14:35 till 3 o'clock and will take tea at 3 o'clock. More flexibility that the lawmakers brought in. If through adverse conditions, and this is flexibility for your tea time, if through adverse conditions you need to leave the field 30 minutes or less to tea, you'll take an early tea. Again, same principle that we apply to lunch. Lunch was if through adverse conditions, 10 minutes to lunch, you'll take an early lunch. Tea is the same principle, but the difference here is if it's 30 minutes or less to go to tea, you'll take an early tea. So, example, our tea time at 3 o'clock. At 14:40, it starts to rain. What happens next? You'll take tea. Tea will be then from 14:40. First ball needs to be bowled at 1500 hours. Again, flexibility that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to the tea interval. So if a stoppage is already in progress when 30 minutes remains before the agreed time for tea, bring your tea forward. Use an example to illustrate this. Our tea time is at 3 o'clock. At 14:20, it starts to rain. What happens next? Can you take an early tea? No, at 14:20, you cannot take an early tea. Why can you not take an early tea? Because we saw in the previous slide, it said you can only, if through adverse conditions, 30 minutes or less, then you can take an early tea. In this example, it's 40 minutes to go to tea. So you cannot take an early tea. So now what point 4 is telling us is, so yeah, we are now at 14:20, so we cannot take an early tea. But as soon as we get to 14:30, then we can take an early tea. So 14:30, it's now half an hour to go to tea. We can then activate that clause when, if it's half an hour to tea, we can take an early tea. So that's what point number 4 is telling us. So our tea time will then take at 14:30, and first ball needs to be bowled at 14:50. Again, flexibility that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to your lunch or your tea interval when the side is 9 wickets down. So over the years they've picked up, and no disrespect to the number 10 and number 11 batters, but they usually not the best batters in the team, and their wickets usually falls quickly. There's lots of stats over the years that prove that 10 and 11 doesn't usually last that long. So the lawmakers picked that up. They then brought this flexibility into when it comes to your lunch or your tea interval. But the side must be 9 wickets down when you get to either your lunch or your tea interval. So what is this flexibility that they brought into the when it comes to your lunch or your tea interval, and the side is 9 wickets down? So this flexibility that they brought in was, and again, this flexibility is they're trying to maximize play, trying to get as much play possible during the day. So what they decided was, if a side, and let's use lunchtime as an example, we get to 12 o'clock and England is 9 down, 300 for 9. You look at your watch, you see it's 12 o'clock. England is 300 for 9. Are you going to take lunch now? The law tells us no, you cannot take lunch. What now do you need to do? You need to play on for a further 30 minutes, a max of 30 minutes, to see if the fielding side can take the final English wicket. But you can only play a max of 30 minutes. I'll use 2 examples just to illustrate this, how this law works. But what I want you to take heed of is the side must be 9 wickets down. So in our example, England 9 wickets down. You look at your watch, you see it's 12 o'clock, final ball gets bowled. You now know you cannot take an early, you cannot take lunch. You need to play on for a max of 30 minutes. So now, let's say at 12:10, India takes the 10th English wicket. Now you can take lunch. Your lunch will now be 40 minutes. First ball needs to be bowled 40 minutes later, which is 12:50. We will then incorporate the change of innings interval into our lunch interval. That's the one example where they do take the 10th wicket within this 30 minutes. Let's say they don't take the 10th wicket within the 30 minutes. So you get to 12 o'clock, England is 9 down. You now know you can play a max of 30 minutes to see if the fielding side can take the wicket. So now you get to 12:30, they bowled the final ball of the over. You look at your watch, you see it's 12:30. What do you now do? Now you need to call overtime and lunch. You now need to take lunch. Max of 30 minutes, you give the fielding side to see if they can take the wicket. Because they couldn't take the wicket in this max time of 30 minutes, you now need to take lunch at 12:30. And lunch will be 40 minutes from 12:30 till 13:10. Lastly, when it comes to maximizing play, interval for drinks. So when it comes to the interval for drinks, the law just tells us not to exceed 5 minutes. So in test matches, interval for drinks is 4 minutes. So in terms of maximizing play when it comes to your drinks interval. So law tells us if a wicket falls or a batter retires within 5 minutes to go to drinks, you will then take drinks immediately. An example to illustrate this, our test match, England-India, for our first session is from 10 till 12. The midway in our session, which is 11 o'clock, there's a drinks interval. So from 11 till 11:04, the drinks is 4 minutes in test matches. So from 11 till 11:04 will be a drinks interval. So at 10:56, a wicket gets taken, any wicket. Now the law tells us, because this is within 5 minutes to go to drinks, you will take drinks immediately. Let's say that this happened the 4th ball of the over. The wicket gets taken 4th ball of the over. You take drinks immediately, and drinks will be from 10:56 till 11 o'clock. But the wicket must fall within 5 minutes. If, another example, if the wicket falls at 10:54, can we take drinks? No, we cannot take drinks, because this is now 6 minutes to go to our drinks interval. The new batter then needs to come in and face the remaining balls of the over. Again, this was brought in to maximize play. Interval for drinks not to be taken during the last hour. And lastly, if the umpires do decide to change their lunch tea intervals, or the law tell us to change your lunch or your tea intervals, please go to the scorers and inform them. Scorers, we're taking an early lunch or an early tea, whatever the case may be. Please inform your scorers of any changes in the times during the day. Tom, thank you so much. That's all I'm covering for this evening. I'm now handing back over to you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for that very thorough lecture of especially the intervals, which can get quite complicated if you don't know your laws. We are now going to move on to our question and answer session, and we are going to start with the questions or comments in the chat box. I have been going through them. A few of you have put in your email addresses, and I've sent you the course material email. The first question posted was by Cizo, and he posted this before you answered it in your slides, Abdullah. Maybe you can just recap it for him and for anyone else who would have forgotten. I do think this is in the exam, so it's a good point to go over. Is there a time limit for rolling? Is there a time limit for rolling the pitch? Abdullah?
Caesar, yes, there is a time limit. Before the game starts, no time limit. The creator can roll to his or her heart's content. But once the game has started, in terms of your timings for your rolling, maximum time to roll, Caesar, is 7 minutes. So can a captain roll for 5 minutes? Yes, the captain can. Can the captain roll for 3 minutes? Yes. 1 minute? Yes. Half a minute? Of course, yes. 8 minutes? Definitely not. Max time to roll 7 minutes. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Next question is from Logan. Are we allowed to have extra water breaks when temperatures are abnormally high? And Abdullah, maybe we can just give some guidelines around what temperatures Cricket South Africa or the International Cricket Council feel are high enough to take extra drinks breaks, please.
The answer to your question is yes, we are allowed. There are playing conditions that allow for this. It can differ from country to country because sometimes you do find some countries where humidity might be very, very high. So let's say it might be 35 degrees, which might not sound much to someone, but then the humidity factor is very, very high. The playing conditions allow for the umpires to factor in extra drinks breaks. So instead of having one drinks break in a session, they can factor in an additional drinks break in the session. We usually also allow for much more flexibility in terms of if it's very, very hot, we allow for if a wicket falls, we then allow for the substitutes to come on with additional drinks and for the batters as well. So usually anything above 40 degrees here in South Africa, we will definitely consider factoring in an additional drinks break. Again, it's not cast in stone. You can find in some countries where it is 30 or 35, but you'll find a very high humidity factor. No issue. You can factor in additional drinks breaks. So what you just need to do is you just speak to both captains saying, because of the high temperatures and the high humidity, we're going to have an additional drinks break. you please also inform the scorers. And then all that you need to do is to stay consistent then throughout for the rest of the game. You cannot be having an additional drinks break. Let's say if it's 40 degrees on day 1 and day 2 it's again 40, but you only have 1. You then just needs to be consistent going forward. Did I cover everything, Tom?
100%. Dula. Before you go away, Juliet asks, if the 5th wicket falls 7 minutes before lunch, do we take lunch? The 5th wicket in an innings.
No, Juliet, you will not take lunch. If an innings ends 10 minutes or less to go to lunch, you will take an early lunch. If a wicket falls within 3 minutes to go to lunch, then the law allows you to take an early lunch, but it must be within 3 minutes to go to lunch. If a wicket falls with 7 minutes to go to lunch, the next batter needs to come in and face the next delivery, and play will continue until 12 o'clock. So only if a wicket falls 3 minutes to go to lunch, we'll then take an early lunch. And let's say the wicket falls at 11:57. We'll then take lunch at 11:57. First ball needs to be bowled at 12:37. But if the 10th wicket falls at 11:53, so i.e. the side is dismissed at 11:53, then you will take an early lunch from 11:53 until first ball then needs to be bowled at 12:33. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. I'll give you a little break and take the next question. It is from Azhar Mahmood, former Pakistani all-rounder. Thanks for joining us, Azhar Mahmood. Is there an age limit for the course? Azhar, we recommend that 13 years old is the minimum age for the course. So if you've got a son or a daughter or nephew or niece who want to join the course, as long as they are 13 years old or older, they are welcome to join. Next question is from Vincent. Vincent has a little scenario for us. He says that the bowler is running up to bowl. Can the wicketkeeper move forward? And when does he stop moving if needed to stop? Vincent, you are jumping ahead by a few laws. I think the wicketkeeper law is law 27. And we will be touching on that law and the movement allowed and not allowed for a wicketkeeper in lecture number 4, if I'm not mistaken, which will be next week, Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. Come back. We won't give you the answer yet. You'll have to join for lecture number 4 to hear the answer of that particular question. Next question, I'm going to hand back over to you, Abdullah. It's from Ali Ahmad. Can you tell us about the rest day which took place in the recent test match between Sri Lanka and New Zealand? I didn't know that there was a rest day, Abdullah.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was. Yeah,
Okay.
there was a rest. There was a rest day, and the only reason why they put the rest day in the test match is it was voting day in Sri Lanka, and they wanted to give all their citizens opportunity, including the cricketers, to make their mark. And it was only one day that you were allowed to vote, so the cricketers were then allowed to go travel to the various districts, make their mark, and come back to the test match venue. So yeah, the only reason why they allowed for this particular test match a rest day was because of voting day, and this was arranged through the Sri Lankan Cricket Board, through the ICCs, not that they just decided or asked permission. They asked permission of the governing body way before this test match that took place, if they can have a rest day to allow their players to vote. The International Cricket Council then granted them permission to include this rest day in the test match. Over, Tom.
Abdullah, can we classify that as any agreed interval as per the law that you went through earlier this evening?
Yeah, you can put it in there. I know back in the days, rest days used to be common. I'm not sure when it stopped, but it used to be very common to have rest days in test matches, and yeah, and it wasn't there put under any agreed interval, but I don't see any issue putting it there. But I think technically the right thing to call it is a rest day.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Next question is a request from Michael to email him the course material. I will do so at the end of this lecture, Michael, as well as anyone else who has put their email addresses and I haven't yet sent the course material to them. Azam Mahmood is back for his second spell of the evening. The total number of intervals allowed in a day, lunch, tea, water break, is there a specific number, Abdullah?
So Azza, scheduled intervals, we get guided by the governing body for cricket for that particular competition. The International Cricket Council, they're the governing body of Test match cricket. So I'll use Test match cricket as an example. So these scheduled intervals are inserted in the playing times or the playing conditions for test matches. And these scheduled intervals are usually fixed. Your lunchtime is fixed, 40 minutes, tea time, 20 minutes, your drinks intervals are 4 minutes, change of innings are 10 minutes. But they do allow a bit of flexibility when it comes to extra drinks breaks because of heat. So they allow the umpires in the playing conditions to insert extra drinks breaks into the day's play. They'll then discuss it with the captains that they're having extra drinks breaks. So in terms of the total numbers, those scheduled intervals are fixed. They set, but with the drinks breaks, that's where you can insert an additional one or two, just depending, but there must be a good reason. Like heat is definitely a good reason to have an additional drinks break. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. Another question from Azab Mahmood. What is the tool used to check for bad light? You want to take that one, Dula?
Yeah, yes, Azza. It is. I'm not sure who's the manufacturer of that particular tool, but it is standardized because at international level and even I'm not sure at provincial level in other countries, but in South Africa we use a similar tool to check the bad light. So we'll put it on the stumps. That's just the method how we do it, and it will then absorb the incoming light. But firstly, before we even use the tool, we need to use our naked eyes. The umpires need to make a judgment call with their eyes that they think it is the light is too dark for fast bowlers, or it's too dark for slow bowlers. So that's the first thing you do. With the naked eye, the umpires will then discuss. So let's say Tom and I are standing, we look at each other, and I'll tell Tom, Tom, I think it's too dark for fast bowlers. We usually have a radio, so I'll go on the radio and I'll tell Tom, Tom, I think it's getting too dark for fast bowlers. Tom will say, yes, I agree. So if we both agree that it's too dark for fast bowlers, and this judgment is done with the naked eye, we will then take a fast bowler's reading. But practically what we'll do is we'll inform the fielding captain, informing him or her, it is, we think it's too dark for fast bowlers. We're now giving you the option to bowl your spinners. The captain can then choose whether he or she wants to exercise that option to bowl spin. If they do exercise that option, play will then continue. If the fielding captain say, no, I want to continue with my fast bowlers, we will then tell the captain, but we think it's too dark for fast bowlers. But if you want to continue, we unfortunately need to suspend play. What we will then do is we will take out our light meter. We will then put it on the stumps. The light meter will then take a reading, and we will log that reading in our notebook as the light meter reading for fast bowlers. We will write it down, whatever the number is. Let's say it's, I'm the thumb sucking a number here, 4.5. We'll take a reading from both ends. So we'll say 4.5 south, 4.5 north. Now we know we do have our fast bowlers reading. And let's say the captain exercised the option to bowl spin. We'll then allow play to continue. And we will allow play to continue until when the umpires feel that it's now too dark for spin. If once we get to that point, we will then tell the fielding captain, it is now too dark for spin. We're going to suspend play. We will then take another light meter reading, one from the one in north and one south. We will not jot it down in our notebook. That will then be the light meter readings for spin, and that will be our benchmark for the rest of the test match. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. While you were giving that brilliant explanation of how to judge the light and how to use light meters, I posted 2 pictures of light meters in the chat box. The green and black light meter that I posted first, that is the light meter we use at Cricket South Africa provincial matches. And the red one, I think that is the one that they use at international matches. Next question is from Azza again. Azza asks if there's any age limit for level 1 to level 3. Azza, the age limit is 13 years old for all the levels. Okay, so as long as you're 13 years old, you can do level 1, level 2, level 3. Some associations in South Africa require you to have a certain amount of umpiring matches on the field before you can do level 2, and then even more matches under your belt in terms of experience on the field before you can do level 3. But we at Western Province Cricket Umpires Association, because we host most of our courses during the off season of April, May, June, July, August, and September, we do allow our umpires to do their levels as quickly as they can. Remember what I mentioned yesterday is that progression through the leagues and to be nominated to age group tournaments for Cricket South Africa umpiring, it's mainly based on performance on the field. So just because you have a level 3 does not guarantee you to umpire Premier League cricket in Cape Town. Just because you have level 3 does not mean you will be automatically selected for age group tournaments. Those are just prerequisites for Premier League cricket and age group tournaments. Abe asks, what is the rule for rolling between 10-minute innings break? Abdullah, so we know that you can roll for a maximum of 7 minutes and the change of innings is 10 minutes. So with the heavy roller, for example, coming onto the field, maybe taking 1 or 2 minutes to get to the middle, and then rolling for 7 minutes, and then taking another 1 or 2 minutes to get off the field, is it always possible to have a 10-minute innings change when there is a 7-minute rolling involved in that change of innings?
Tom, in my experience, 9 out of 10 times, or 99% of the time, that change of innings interval is never 10 minutes. Most captain wants 10-minute, 7-minute rolling, and it takes a while for the roller to get on. Ground staff first remove the debris from the pitch, and only after removing the debris by sweeping, then the rolling starts. Then they still need to remove the roller from the pitch. So yeah, it's yes, the change of innings is 10 minutes, but it's hardly 10 minutes. It usually, most of the time, 12, 13 minutes. That additional 3 minutes just get taken out of playing time. There are playing conditions that do take care of if you do lose these type of time, you get an extra half an hour to complete your overs. So it's not really a lost time during the day, but the captain is allowed to have 7 minutes rolling, even if that roller takes a while to get on the field. You cannot deny a captain. Let's say the innings ended at 11:10, and the roller only gets to the pitch at 11:15. Let's say it's slow and it's slow to get there. You cannot now tell the captain, no, captain, we need to start at 20 past 11. You can only get 2-3 minutes rolling because we need to start at 20 minutes, at 20 past. No, the captain is entitled to have 7 minutes rolling. So if that rolling starts at 11:15, the captain, if he or she wants 7 minutes, you'll have to roll till 11:20, 22. And you'll probably start at 11:24 or 20:25. Yes, you started 12 minutes later, but current playing conditions do allow for a bit of flexibility. There is time that we can utilize, to make up overtime.
Yeah, and also like you have to remark the creases also, so that's an additional time that will
That's
require.
even more time. That's why, in theory, they say change of innings 10 minutes, but practically, hardly
Most
10 minutes.
Yeah, most of the times I find the laws are actually the guidelines for conducting the game, not strict laws that it has to be.
I agree.
Thanks for that input, Umesh. Let us continue to go through the questions in the chat box. I see there are a lot of questions from Azar Mahmoud. Azar, for fairness to other candidates in the call, I'm going to skip your questions. We'll come back to them at the end of the lecture. So the next question we're going to read through is from Farhan Ali. If a 10th wicket falls in 15 minutes before lunch or before tea, what can we do? Do we take lunch? Do we take tea? Or do we start the next innings 10 minutes later? Abdullah, just a recap, please.
Yeah, Farhan, there is a difference how when it comes to tea and when it comes to lunch, how you'll handle this particular question. So when it comes to lunchtime, to activate the early lunchtime clause, an innings needs to end 10 minutes or less. If an innings ends 10 minutes or less to lunch, you can activate the early lunchtime clause, and you can take an early lunch. In your scenario, because it's 15 minutes to go to lunch, you cannot activate that early lunchtime clause. An innings needs to end 10 minutes or less. Your case, it's 15 minutes to go to lunch. So what will now happen is there will be a change of innings interval from 11:45 till 11:55, and over 2 needs to be bowled, and you can take lunch at 12 o'clock. When it comes to tea time, slightly different, because tea time tells us if an innings ends 30 minutes or less to go to tea, now you can take an early tea. So in your scenario, let's say tea is at 3 o'clock. If the innings ended at 14:45, because this is 30 minutes or less to go till tea, you can take early tea time clause. So you'll take an early tea from 14:45 till 15:05. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dilla. Next question is from Celso. Celso asks if he can watch this session the following day, which is tomorrow. Yes, Celso. All our lectures are recorded, and I do post the lecture on YouTube as soon as I can after the lecture. The latest I will post it on YouTube is the following morning. Last night's lecture I posted 2 hours after the lecture completed. Depending on circumstances on the day, I might be able to post lectures straight after the lecture. Otherwise, definitely the next morning. And as mentioned, if you are a subscriber to our YouTube channel, there is an option for you to be notified every time that we post a video. So if you choose that option, then you won't even have to wait for me to send out the email with the link for the posting of a video. You will get notified by email automatically from YouTube as to when we have posted video. Next question is from Abhishek. The 3-minute or less rule for a wicket falling, does that apply to tea or only for lunch, Abdullah? Do we take tea immediately if a wicket falls 3 minutes before the scheduled tea break?
Yes and no. Yes, if it's any other wicket except the 9th wicket. So if the 9th wicket falls 3 minutes to tea, you will activate that, play an additional 30 minutes further, or max of 30 minutes further, to see if the fielding side can take the 10th wicket. If it's any other wicket, let's say it's whether it's the 8th wicket or 7th wicket or if it's 3rd wicket, if that falls 3 minutes or less to tea, we will take an early tea. Yes. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. A few more requests for course material to be sent to email addresses. Please note that every email that I send, including the reminders for lectures, also includes the course material email below it. So if you received the reminder email for today's lecture, then just scroll down and you will see the course material at the bottom of the lecture. I'm seeing email addresses that I definitely did send the reminder email to earlier today. Javid asks, a team playing with 10 players, what will be the fielding restrictions? So Javid, remember that we are going through the laws of cricket, and the laws of cricket allow a team to play with more or less than 11 players. The only restriction being that a maximum of 11 fielders may field at any given point in time. There are no fielding restrictions apart from one. You cannot have more than 2 fielders behind the popping crease on the leg side. And we will get into that detail in future laws. The fielder law, I think it's law 27, it might be law 28. There are fielding restrictions in playing conditions for limited overs cricket. We will not be going into those in the laws of cricket course that we are presenting. If you join us for level 2 and level 3, we will unpack those for you next year. Abdullah, Logan asks, when does lightning suspend play? How does it need to be? Does it need to be so loud that it blows your eardrums? Or do we have any equipment that we monitor lightning with?
Yeah, so Logan, we get guided by the ICC, and the guidance they use is this 30-30 guideline. So what is this 30-30 guideline? If there are 30 seconds or less between the flash and when you hear the thunder, it's time to get off. Any less 30 or less between the flash, you'll first see the flash, and then you'll hear the thunder. So if you see the flash and you started counting, you start to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say you get to 10 and you hear the thunder, you need to get off the field. That's just a guideline that the ICC gives us. Okay, but we as umpires are on the field, and I've seen different venues, and you need to treat them differently. There are some venues, and what we do use is we do use the radar. The match referee has access, and the ground staff, they have access to the radar apps, and they can tell us by using the radar apps how far the lightning is away from us. So there's no exact science. I've seen at some grounds where it showed the lightning was 20 kilometers away, but it felt like it was literally upon us. So it's just a guideline to use those lightning apps. Umpires are still, the sole judges. When it comes to lightning, we err on the side of caution. We don't play with it. If this is one of those instances where if one umpire feels that he or she wants to go off because of the lightning, there needs to be no agreement. If one umpire feels he or she wants to go off because they feel the lightning is too close, play will then be suspended. So we are on the side of caution. If there are lightning around, we out there. Yes, we do use the lightning apps as guidelines, but I've seen those apps where I was in Potchefstroom last year, and the app showed it was like 40 k's away. But but my partner and I felt it felt like when there was this flash of lightning, it was almost upon us. So we radio that into the match referee saying, we're going to suspend play. Yes, I know the app is saying it's 40 k's away, but I promise you, it felt as if that lightning bolt was almost on the ground. So we used guidelines like your lightning app, but still we out there, and we make the call. The umpires make the call. Safety of players is paramount. We err on the side of caution, and not just safety of players, not just safety of the umpires. We also need to take the safety of the ground staff into consideration, because usually if there's lightning, not always the case, but there are many times the rain around, the ground then needs to be covered. We cannot wait till the 11th hour when lightning is almost upon us. Ground staff needs to cover the field. we cannot just think of umpires and players. We need to think of the ground staff as well. So yeah, there's lots of factors that we take into account. There's no right or wrong. Yes, we do use additional info like the Lightning app, and it gets radio to us via the match referee, because that's provincial and international level. Only the match referee can have a communication device. No one else can. So the match referee will usually keep us informed how far the Lightning is away from us, but it's not cast in stone. As I said, been in the game last year where it showed 40 Ks, but I promise you, it felt as if that Lightning was upon us, and we took the players off the field. I was also in games where the Lightning app showed it was like 10 Ks away, but it looked like it was far in the distance. I mean, and so the point I'm just trying to make is there's no right or wrong. It's just you need to assess conditions, what you see, how you feel, taking additional info into account. But what I can tell you is safety of players, umpires, ground staff, paramount in taking. So on the side of caution. In all my years, I've never seen a captain complain when there's lightning around, complain about, the umpires took us off too early. All of us are scared of lightning. We've seen the consequences if lightning hits players. So we are on the side of caution. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Question from Abhishek. Can we make up time if time is lost due to ground weather or light conditions?
Abhishek, yes. So this is where International Cricket Council, I'll use test matches as an example, because there are a playing condition that allows us to make up 60 minutes of time. So we can lose 60 minutes before we start reducing overs. So to answer your question, yes, we can make up time. We've got 60 minutes. If once we start losing more than 60 minutes due to adverse conditions, we will now then start to lose overs during the day. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. We seem to have gone through everybody else's questions. So now we can get to Azam Mahmood's host of questions. I'm going to start with where he talks about himself, and maybe this is a good way to get him involved as well in the conversation, to clear up any misunderstandings or language barrier issues we might have. Azam Mahmood says, my age is 39 years old. Which course do you recommend me to do? An umpiring course or a cricket coaching level 1, level 2, or level 3 course? Then he goes on to ask, how much hard working after I've enrolled in the ICC panel? These courses are accepted all over the world in Asia, UK. He says he is near Rawalpindi Stadium in Pakistan. So, Azza, I think first thing I would say is, have you started umpiring already, or have you not started umpiring? I see your hand is up, Azza. Do you want to unmute your microphone and let me know, do you have any umpiring experience up to now, or you haven't umpired at all? Please unmute your microphone. The floor is yours. Okay, Azza is not unmuting his microphone. So I'll try best answer his questions as I understand him. So Azza, like I mentioned yesterday, the career path of an umpire is different from one person to the next. It took me 10.5 years to get onto the Cricket South Africa first class panel. I think it took Abdullah 6 years or 7 years to get onto the Cricket South Africa national first class panel. It took Murray Erasmus 8 years to get onto the ICC elite panel umpires, and it took Azza, I'll give you a chance to speak when I'm done. It took Adrian Holstock 18 years to get onto the ICC elite panel of umpires. It took all of us a lot of hard work to get to where we are, and the hard work continues. You never stop as an umpire. The day that you stop learning is the day that you will stop progressing as an umpire. You need to sacrifice a lot of family time away from home, and you also will miss a lot of family functions and weddings and birthday parties and all sorts of activities that happen on a Saturday when you are on the field. You need to make a commitment to your cricket umpiring career if you want to go far. So, Azza, I hope that answers your question. There is no one guaranteed route to the top as to the ICC elite panel of umpires. If there was a perfect formula, then everybody would make it there. But there are only 12 umpires on the ICC elite panel of, and that means that not everybody's going to make it. But I hope you enjoy your journey. That is the most important. If you don't enjoy it, you won't make it far, and you won't be willing to make the sacrifices required to get to the highest level. Azza, did that answer your questions, or do you still want to answer or ask a few more? Please unmute the microphone. The floor is once again yours. Azza Mahmood from Rawalpindi, Pakistan. Okay, when I ask you to unmute your microphone, you're not unmuting. I think a little bit of stage fright there from Azza Mahmood. He's retired now, so he's not as sharp as he used to be, Tula. Last question in the chat box is from Asif Hassan Khan. If a player is injured during fielding and he didn't field for the whole day, how late can he come to bat? Asif, that is dealt with in Law 24. We will cover it next week with a few examples. Azza Mahmood, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Tom, I am very delightful to you just to seeing your course, and your team software classes are very good. But my question is that because I am 39 years old, and which course you recommend to me, because I'm not I am starting from zero, as I am watching the cricket very perfectly from the since childhood. But that's why I'm suggest a recommendation about the course which is very suitable, because you are said that you have sacrificed all the time with the family and the birthday and some others. It take too much time, and you also mentioned that only 12 person who are in the ICC panel, because it is too much take time process, and hard work is key to success. And which course is suitable for me? That's why I'm saying again and again, it's a cricket coaching course or this umpiring, because someone with this field from Pakistan, the district cricket association Rawalpindi and the Pakistan Sports Board, they are not conducting these kinds of courses, and these are very fruitful for every individual who are interested in cricket. These are my some questions.
All right, Azza. So firstly, I think you've come to the right place. Stick with me and Abdullah and we'll take you places. We've said that a lot over the years and it's been proven. I'm just going to mute you, Azak, because I'm getting some feedback from your side. Last year, July, I trained a female umpire, Sarah from Zimbabwe. And today I got the news that she will be umpiring in the Women's T20 World Cup taking place in the United Arab Emirates starting on the 3rd of October. So I'm very proud. I'm not the only person that has trained her in her umpiring career, but I'm proud that I hopefully played some part to lead her to become not just an international umpire, but an umpire chosen. There's only 10 of them who are going to be umpiring at the Women's T20 World Cup in the United Arab Emirates. And Sarah is one of them. So congratulations to Sarah. And it is testimony to all of her hard work, all of her sacrifices. And it also, I believe, tells me that as a trainer, I'm doing a good job when one of my umpires that I've trained is now going to be umpiring at a World Cup. But you have to be passionate about umpiring, Azza. Just because you're passionate about cricket doesn't mean necessarily that you'll be passionate and enjoy umpiring. So you can try the umpiring courses, you can try the coaching courses, you can try the scoring courses, you can try the pitch curatorship courses. Whatever you find most interesting is what you should focus on and go with for the rest of your cricket career. At the age of 39, it is a bit late to be starting as an umpire. As mentioned, in South Africa, if you are 42 years or older, Cricket South Africa will not track your progress and will not invite you to their elite amateur tournaments for you to progress through their pipeline and to become a first-class cricket umpire. So I know scorers score up until very late in their lives in terms of age, Azar. So maybe a scorer's course is a good idea to go with. Coaching as well, you do get coaches who are 60 and 70 years old, but you tend to find that they have many years of experience to get to coach at the highest level. As mentioned yesterday as well, the ICC has got a lot of these courses freely available on their website, and you can do them from anywhere in the world. Just Google ICC foundation phase courses, and you will find all of them on the internet. Azza, I hope that answers your question, and I wish you the best in whichever course you pursue in cricket. Michael says he missed yesterday's class. Can I get the class? Michael, Abdullah did post it right at the beginning of the lecture. Abdullah, maybe Michael wasn't connected when you posted the link. Could you maybe copy and paste it once again into the chat box for Michael to click on the link and watch yesterday's lecture? Asif says that the PCB, which is the Pakistan Cricket Board, has submitted the papers for the umpiring course and are going to start level 1 anytime now. So there you go, Azam Mahmood. You can, apart from doing Cricket South Africa's level 1 umpiring course, you can also do Pakistan Cricket Board's level 1 umpiring course. Michael, you want to upgrade your umpiring level? You have come to the right place. Stick with us and we'll take you places. One last question from Abhishek. Abdullah, can you please once again elaborate on the 60 minutes of extra time in test matches per day?
Yes, Abhishek, I'll just summarize it briefly. So in Test match cricket, the playing hours, they play 2 hour sessions, so play 6 hours in total. The playing conditions for Test match cricket allows 60 minutes of time to be made up due to ground weather or light. So how that works is, if let's say you starting time is 10 o'clock, cutoff time is 5 o'clock. From you start the game at 10:30, from 10 till 11, so for half an hour it started, it rained. So that half an hour, you won't lose any time because you've got 60 minutes of time that you can make up in the bank. So you can go to that 60 minutes, you can utilize half an hour from it. So what that means is you'll extend your close of play from 5 o'clock till 17:30. You've used 30 minutes of your 60. So you still got 30 minutes in the bank to utilize for later in the day if it should rain again. And you will not lose any overs. You'll still have to bowl a minimum of 90 overs during the day. So let's say there was a second interruption later in the day for an hour. So now the morning you lost already 30 minutes to rain. Now it rained for another 60 minutes. So the second rain interruption that lasted for 60 minutes, because you only had 30 minutes in the bank to utilize because you've already used 30 earlier in the day, you can now utilize this 30 minutes that you have in the bank, and you will only be losing 30 minutes. And you need to convert that 30 minutes into overs. And 30 divided by 4 is 7 overs. So you lose 7 overs in the day. So 90 minus 7 is 83. So you'll have to bowl a minimum of 83 overs in the day. And your close of play will be rescheduled to 1800 hours. It is much more complex than that. I've tried to summarize it in a minute and a half. I do need much more time to explain to exactly how this concept work of 60 minutes of that you do have at your disposal to make up if you lose time due to ground, weather or light. But hopefully that brief, quick summary and the use of an example explain to you how the 60 minute works. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Abhishek has thanked you for the answer as well, so he's satisfied. I don't see any further questions in the chat box. I see one more hand up in the meeting room. Talha Iqbal, please unmute your microphone and you can ask the last question of the evening.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I thank you for starting this course and I appreciate your team. Actually, I want to ask if this course acceptable in international level or domestic level, especially in Pakistan, we have no any opportunities to avail this course. Please, simple explain, please. You will issue any certificates which will acceptable of international or domestic level. Thank you.
You're welcome, Talha. Good question. I did touch on this yesterday, but I will repeat it for the benefit of those of you who were not in yesterday's lecture. Africa's 2 and level 3 umpiring certificates are acceptable widely throughout most cricket playing nations around the world. Definitely all cricket playing nations in Africa except our certifications. In Pakistan and in India, they do accept the certifications. However, because of the demand of people wanting to umpire in Pakistan and in India, they will still require you to write an entry-level exam in your country to be able to start umpiring in Pakistan. So what we will do when you pass the Cricket South Africa Level 1 exam, you will be sent a certificate, and at the end of the window period on the Thursday, the 31st of October, all of those candidates who have passed their exam, when you receive your certificate during the window period between the 21st and the 31st of October, I will ask you where you are based, and you need to tell me, I am based in Rawalpindi in Pakistan, or I'm based in Karachi in Pakistan, or I'm based in Lahore in Pakistan. And we will try and get you a contact in the Umpires Association closest to you for you to send them our certificate, your Cricket South Africa Level 1 certificate. That is proof that you have passed the course, and then you can ask them, please may I join your Umpires Association, and they will require you to write an entrance exam. And because you would have had a Cricket South Africa Level 1 umpiring certificate attached to your CV, you will probably get the chance ahead of other candidates who want to write the entrance exam. But because there is so much demand of people wanting to write the entrance exam, they will limit it to a few people, and you will be at the front of that queue because of the qualification you got from Cricket South Africa. And that is how you will be able to start umpiring in Pakistan. Talha, I hope that answers your question, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So I do not see any apologies, everyone. I got cut off there for a little bit. I was just taking the opportunity to thank all of you for your attendance and your interaction this evening. It's gone on for 32 minutes of extra time. We've used 32 out of the 1 hour extra time that we are allowed, Abdullah. I'm sure we will use more as the course gets more interesting in future lectures. So Abhishek has one more question. Abhishek, unmute your microphone. The floor is yours. Abhishek, are you still here?
I don't.
Yes, go ahead.
I have one question, but I will keep it for the last. It's not better to ask now. I will ask in the later stages. No worries.
Okay, great, Abhishek.
Yeah.
I know that it is now midnight in India. So yes, Abhishek,
Yeah.
I think it is a good time to call overtime and stumps for today. We will meet
Yeah.
again next week, Monday, same time, same place, same Microsoft Teams meeting link. I will not have time to send the link to everybody on WhatsApp again. I will only send it via email. So please check your emails. Use old emails if you need to. Same link applies. Thank you very much once again for your attendance and your interaction. Have a good week further. Good night. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.